You want to just
Open this.
You have an agenda.
It's in
Yeah.
there. Lots of watching.
All right.
We're officially open.
We're officially open for
There it
business.
is.
So just a couple things before you get into the agenda. I popped the calendar in here just in case we need to use that throughout the year. District calendar. And then also, I believe, Karen, this is the latest that you sent me on our meeting dates, topics, times, and our agenda, our tentative agendas for, sometimes we add, sometimes
Yeah.
we take away.
Oh, yeah, we're very flexible.
Yeah. And then today, to get into the agenda, I'm gonna give you some updates on the RTI plan, RTI AIS plans. A little bit of updates on RTI Edge. I'll get into that a little bit. Our DCEP set plans that you'll be seeing on the board agenda for Monday evening. A little update on our SIG grant, professional learning plan for 2023. You'll also see that as an item to be voted on. I'll get into that a little bit. I'll give you some curriculum updates. My right-hand person here, Dana, is going to give you a little bit of overview of our title grant, where we're at. And then I think maybe Dana and I both will speak a little bit on Amplify Service, one of us. All right. Any questions on the agenda? All good. Okay, if you take a look at the first tab, and you can see our current RTI plan online. Under the educational programs, if you're interested in taking a look at what our current plan is. And then I met last week with the reading specialist to go over the RTI AIS plan, mainly for the purposes of updating some things. We got into a conversation as we started planning and looking to move the AIS plan out of the RTI plan. Originally, when I first got here, we put the AIS plan in together for one document. We've talked about this a little bit over the last year about removing that and then making AIS a separate plan. The other conversation that came up was to, currently our RTI plan is a K-6 plan. Under commissioner's regulations, you only have to have it as a K-4 plan. Originally, when that was put into place before my time, it was because we to keep all of the reading and the math together. As we are going to move away to a 5-6 configuration, the team felt that it was time to maybe move 5-6 to make a 5-12 AIS plan. There's not a need under commissioner's regs to do that. Students will receive the same types of services in 5th and 6th grade for reading and math as they did under the RTI plan. The AIS plan is very similar to that, but it'll keep everything in line and also bring us back to what the original intention of RTI was, response to intervention. A couple things I'd like to point out, if you can turn to page, let me just see, page 10 of the plan. You'll see some things highlighted. I did try to highlight any changes that we're proposing to the plan so that you can cross-reference that with the current plan that we have. On page 10, that starts the different tiers. When you're looking at RTI, we have a 3-tiered system. When we refer to tier 1, we're referring to a regular ed instruction. So that's the instruction that every student gets in the regular ed classroom. When we go to tier 2, we're talking about services that are done within the classroom with the teachers for both math and reading. And that's really kind of in your station rotation cycle. Students who don't need tier 2 services get some extra general ed time during that planning time or during that RTI time. And then our tier 3 are the students who receive intensive instruction. It's a pull-out model with our reading specialist and our math specialist. So underneath, the biggest change that you're going to see within the tiers are the intervention pieces. And that we've changed down below. I don't believe I highlighted the interventions. But what we've done is we've taken our interventions and we've made sure that they're aligned to everything that we're currently using right now. The old plan, there's some things that we're using and then there's things that they used in the past. So this will be all updated for us with our interventions. The new thing that we did put in this was also a column for resources that folks can use with those interventions. If you go to 11, you'll see the tier 2 strategies. You'll also see the tier 2 interventions and the tier 2 resources. Some of those have changed just a little bit. And then last on page 12, you will see the tier 3 interventions and the tier 3 resources. Any questions so far? No.
I always
Sorry.
have questions.
Hey, go ahead.
So I know, John, I'm sorry. So tier 1 is, so just general education. Tier 2, a teacher gives students the tier 2 in the classroom. What are the other kids doing in the classroom?
It's usually when you're having stations,
Okay,
and so the teacher will work directly with a student or put them on an intervention if it's one of the platforms for additional targeted supports for tier 2. The other children are also working on things, but it's not that intensive.
okay. So then the teacher is taking that group and working maybe with the group of kids that need the tier 2. Correct. The other kids maybe don't. Okay.
Kids like identified, like in the classroom. I'm just wondering, like, if I'm in there, oh, those are tier 2 kids. No,
No,
that's what I was wondering.
no.
If you walk in, you'll see all children will have time to work with the teacher.
Okay,
It's just if you are in tier 2 instruction, when you come in, your group is working on something specifically that you
Okay.
needed additional
okay.
And those
targeted
kids
supports
don't
for.
ever know what
Yeah,
you're
good.
working on.
Well, that's what I was worried about.
And
yeah.
I'm assuming that's how you break up classrooms too, the following year, that you know kids are tier 2, because you can't put this many tier 2 kids in one classroom and not, right? So you have to break it up.
It depends. I mean, because
Right.
some kids, I mean, right now we know some kids are tier 2 at this moment. From last year, we'll still continue those services this year as they go in. Some other students could be potentially identified again, and that wouldn't be until not necessarily January after they do the first,
November.
so right around November. Could potentially also have some students that would be identified after
As
that
tier
time period, once we test those students.
The goal would be that some of your tier 2s would move down to tier 1
Correct.
and then the tier 3s.
Okay.
So you're constantly fluctuating between the tiers.
And they get identified right in kindergarten? Is tier 2, tier 3?
Well, you could, yeah, you get identified in kindergarten, absolutely. But they could be identified throughout.
Right, throughout.
Yeah, because that
Yeah.
changes.
But starting right in kindergarten, a teacher's working with.
In January.
Mid-year.
correct, Mid-year.
Okay,
Yep. Mhm.
So even the kids that are in tier 2, they don't know that they're tier 2, they're just in the class.
Yeah, even during our tier 1 time, we have what's called guided reading.
Mhm.
And the teacher rotates students out based on their reading level.
Mhm.
Kids don't really know the reading level. The
Right.
teacher is the one who knows that reading level, but kids all get rotated through those stations. So they do have time to work with the teacher, even if they're having no reading difficulties whatsoever. They would have some time to also work on the computer, either on Freckle or Zern or Reading A to Z.
Right, because they could
Um,
have a high reading level, but is their
Correct.
comprehension
Yeah.
always there?
That's right.
So that's, something that the teacher would focus on.
And then the teacher would work with children too that might have a high level as
Absolutely.
well, because you want to obviously.
But sometimes they read really fast and it's like, did you just comprehend what you read?
So those students might be like if you were talking about a kindergarten class, I mean, those students who might be at the higher level might be working in March on a letter D. And they would be reading with the teacher on that level D when they're in the guided reading group.
So the difference would be just for you probably to
Yeah.
kind of compartmentalize, because everybody's kind of moving through the same activities. The
Mhm.
difference is when you're tier 2, the teacher has to keep progress notes and enter it into a system that then spits out the next results, right? So there's another level of data that you're collecting for children that are at that tier 2 level versus the tier 1 that's moving through all those same activities and the extension activities, all of that.
And that just puts, we've talked about this before, because we have to get a system worked out for the data. We have to get the professional development. Teachers have to get comfortable with that, but it does add an other element of a lot of work for them, especially if you have 30 kids in the class and 15 of them are tier 2 kids, because you gotta
Right.
put the data in and monitor them. So it adds another, it's.
And there are some ways with the progress monitoring now with STAR that we're able to do
Yeah,
that.
that's
It's
gonna be a
called
big
the
help.
curriculum-based management. And so what they would be able to do, the teachers for progress monitoring every 2 weeks, they would be able to put them on a curriculum-based management test that would test the student and automatically upload that information into RTI Edge. But at the end of the marking period, they would have to give progress notes. So this is a progress they're making with tier 2, so on and so forth. Most school districts do have tier 2 within the classroom, and the teachers do that work.
So STAR is talking to RTI Edge?
Oh, yeah.
They are talking, okay.
Yep.
Oh, good.
Yeah, all of our reading data is transferred into RTI Edge now. We actually, it used to be the scaled score that went in there. One of the school psychologists said, hey, we're only getting the scaled score. We really want the percentile rate because that's how we determine things. And so I worked with the RIC, and it was a quick fix. They got the percentile rank in there, and it shows, it's got a different color. It's got green, yellow, red. So it shows and highlights very quickly for the school psychologist or the student support team that, hey, this kid might need an intervention. But they would look at not only the test that day, they would look at possibly an F&P score, the benchmark assessment. And then they might also take some samples from the classroom in order to do that. But they have to have 3 points of data. They can't just rely on that one 20-30 minute test and that determines what your reading level is. So there's other ways that teachers would look at that to make that, make that determination for students. The other term that you might be hearing tossed around is the science of reading. You've probably heard of that being tossed around out and about. You may have heard teachers maybe talk about that a little bit. We do what's called a balanced literacy approach in our tier 1 instruction. Balanced literacy is what almost all schools do. They don't do whole language and they don't do straight phonics. We do balanced literacy. So we have phonemic awareness, we have phonics, we have the guided reading, we have the shared reading, we have the interactive read alouds, and we also have the independent reading. Thank you. I almost forgot that. So we incorporate all those things into our reading program. A lot of schools will also use what's called a basal, which is a reader with just different stories in there. We moved away from that 6 years ago and began using authentic stories with kids during that shared reading to connect them and to help them make that connection. We're looking into, we kind of do the science of reading also in a balanced literacy program because we have the phonemic awareness and we have the phonics in there. Science of reading takes it a little bit further, and basically the science says you can't teach kids how to read without having phonemic awareness and phonics and helping them break the code first, which is pretty well accurate with the research. Our balanced literacy program does do that already, but some kids still need some extra help and some different approaches to that phonemic awareness or phonics. So what we've built in with the Haggerty, we also have Bridge the Gap, which is an intervention that you can use at the tier 3 for kids who haven't quite broken that phonemic awareness. And that's just the sounds, basically, phonemic awareness. The phonics is taking the sounds and putting it to print. So we've got interventions for kids who haven't quite broken that yet. And we are also looking at a new intervention for students who haven't cracked the code with phonics to be able to put the sound to print. And that's, if you take a look on, maybe I didn't put that one in there. It's not through the Florida Center for Research, but I think we're going to have to, oh no, I'm sorry, I did. It's over on recommended tier 3 interventions. UFLI, the Foundations Manual. That is something that our reading specialists have asked us for. And it's really good. It's got a very nice scope and sequence and runs them through different lessons so that we can help the kid crack the code and get them out of tier 3 back down to tier 2 or tier 1. The one thing that we want to make sure is that when you go into RTI, that you're not there for life. We have some kids that have remained in there for a long period of time. So we've got some newer interventions in place that we're hoping is going to help the kid to crack the code and get them back. The other professional learning that we're doing with our reading specialist, I'm hoping to get all of them to in the fall to the Reading League conference. It's in Syracuse. It's a 2-day conference, and it's all based around the science of reading, so they keep up with the latest research. So those are some of the things that are going on with RTI. The next page is 14 that I just wanted to bring your attention to. I've got to change the screening timeframes. We haven't done that yet. But this will give you, this sort of lays out the types of testing that we use with kids as our universal screeners to see whether or not they need that extra help with tier 2 or tier 3. So we do the STAR early lit, or we do Brugance in the fall for our kindergarten students. That's our kindergarten screener. We begin STAR early literacy in the winter and also Haggerty. And then so that we can take a look at whether or not our kindergarten students have made improvements or have grown with Haggerty. We'll also do that again in spring. Same thing with STAR early literacy. And what we do 3 times a year is we'll give you all of the reading data from that STAR exam so that you can see it. And then what we do a progression throughout the year so that you can see whether or not the kids are growing or which areas our kids aren't growing into. So we'll have that. And I'm hoping this year, actually, I've got the pivot tables. I'm hoping that we're able to just download it into Excel, because normally I put it all into a Google sheet and just type it in by hand and double check the work. But there's a way to do it in Excel now that I think will save a little bit of time, and we can do some fun tables with it, I think, throughout the year as we do that. But the rest you'll see, we're also going to, something that's a little bit different from last year, is we had some grade 1 teachers at the end use STAR literacy. I've asked, and I'll ask the principals once again, just to keep the kids on early literacy all the way through 1st grade. There's no point of trying to get them into the literacy. Some kids are ready for that, but the STAR early literacy will tell us that information also. That way we can also keep our data pretty accurate, and you can look at that growth throughout the year, because it was a little wonky last year with the end of 1st, because some gave, I tried to do it the best I could, but we're going to try to do it so it's all completely aligned this year. And then likewise in grade 2, we will use STAR literacy from the beginning for kids. Students who struggle with that, they give them 2, I think it's 2 or 3 practice questions. Some kids can't get past those practice questions. So what we'll do is we'll just encourage the teachers to just go ahead and give them those practice questions. That way it gets them right into it, and we'll be able to tell right away if they're having some reading difficulties with the STAR letters once they start that. The page 15, real quick, are just the criteria for interventions for services for both reading and math. We have not changed any of that. No one proposed any changes to that. I think that's pretty solid where we're at. What do we look at for students who need services, and how do we exit students also? I've not heard any negative feedback also from the RTI teams from the buildings on that. So I think we're still pretty good with that. Page 17, just so you're aware, is the Fontes and Pinnell information. The only thing that I did take out this time was we kept it up, or for the DRA, I'm sorry, not for Fontes and Pinnell. For the DRA, I took out 5 and 6 in this. But down below, you'll see, and we thought it was still important for everyone to see that continuum for the Fontes and Pinnell all the way through 6th grade, because we'll continue using Fontes and Pinnell with 5 and 6, even when 5 and 6 separates from the elementary schools. The last 3 pages, real quick, are just additional guidelines for procedures to help our RTI teams or student support teams. And I didn't include, we do have also an evaluation for our RTI process. I didn't include that in this, but nothing's changed on that RTI evaluation process. And we'll include that in our regular plan. We're not, Karen and I talked a little bit about this when we met. We are not looking to move to this new plan in September. They've got enough stuff on their plate right now. I also want to include the principals in on what we've done here, and also want to include a few other classroom teachers. We had some classroom teachers with us on this team. But that'll give us some time to really look through this one more time to make sure that it's going to work for everybody in all of our schools, and to make sure that we didn't miss something, or there's other things that need to be added or taken away from this plan. So we just want to get a little bit more input on this.
So can you just touch on that real quick? Before moving to a new plan or anything that you implement for the teachers, you choose teachers or you get representatives from different schools, principals, and then everyone's in on this plan and agrees and then moves forward with the delivery.
Yeah, I'm not sure you'll get everybody across the board to necessarily
Right,
agree or want to
no,
agree,
but-
but yeah. So we had the reading specialists from the different schools. Obviously, we're in summer right now, so I couldn't get 20 people together necessarily. The invite went out to all of the reading specialists. We had math specialists also. So whoever wanted to come
They
could, yeah, to start working on this plan. As I said in this, I still want to get some principal feedback on that. Not sure that we had a school psychologist. It's important to get their feedback on that because they run those RTI meetings.
And the teachers who are
And the
actually
teachers that
doing
were,
the-
yeah, exactly, and the
work.
teachers that are actually doing that work. Yep, so we'll get their input too. What we will do is, as we begin moving toward this process also, is I will, once this is board approved too, which will probably be either later this year to implement in the fall of 2023, or in the summer at some point, that we'll have enough time to kind of run through this. What Jim and I did when we first rolled out this RTI plan, when it was accepted back in, what was it, 19, maybe 20, we went to all of the schools and went over the plan with the teachers also, just so that they had a faculty meeting, just so that they were aware, hey, this has changed a little bit. This is what the plan looks like. There's not a lot of change to what they're already familiar with the exception of the interventions. But that's something that we'll discuss. Those interventions should be being used, even though it's not approved at this point, because they've already been in place. So we'll let them know about that too, and to be able to look at those interventions up front. Good questions. Any other questions on RTI plan? All right, let's get into let me just check my time. Okay, DSEP and the SEPs. So the first thing that you will see, and that you'll hopefully be approving, or at least will be up for a vote, is the board has to approve all of the improvement plans within the district. So the first plan that you'll take a look at is a DSEP, and that is a district comprehensive improvement plan. That's what DSEP stands for. We have to identify priorities for the district. And when you talk about the DSEP, we're looking at the entire district and all schools. So one of the important pieces for the DSEP also was to somewhat align those to the school plans, so that we don't have a whole different plan from the schools that are in need of improvement too. Now theirs might look a little bit different. We had to come up with 3 to 5 priorities. The team's philosophy was, the more simple that we can keep it, the more likely it's going to be implemented. I'm of that mindset too. Let's not overdo
elaborate
this.
and then nobody's.
Exactly.
follow through.
And let's do something that we can actually follow through with and take a look and have some measurements. Are we making some progress with that? So we could choose 3 to 5. We chose 3. The schools could choose anywhere from 2 to 4, I believe, commitments is what they call them. I really asked the principals to try to stick to 2, so it's not overwhelming for their teachers and it's not overwhelming for them to manage either. But looking at it through the lens of what are some high leverage things that we might be able to do to help get us off the list, and also at the same time to help our students and teachers. So I think they did a very good job. Every one of these plans had to have a team. I had to have parents on the team. We had 2 parents on the team. We had to have administrators, and we also had to have teachers on the team to work through that. So you'll see the people that ask us to list those people and also the times we met. We didn't do a lot of change from last year in the DSEP plan. In the schools, the same thing. They did some minor changes to it. I specifically asked the state if we were allowed to do that because we really felt that we had some good goals in mind that we didn't completely get to finish last year due to some of the COVID at the beginning of the year. And likewise, the buildings had the same situation. They didn't get to everything that they wanted to. And so they were able to stick to some of those same things that they also wanted to do. So let me just talk about consistency. The DSEP plan, just so that you're aware, does not get approved by New York State Education Department. We do have to turn it in, which I've already done. They do give you some feedback, and the feedback that we did receive from them was your DSEP plan looks pretty similar to last year's DSEP plan, which is true. You may want to consider, maybe changing this or changing that. And that was their feedback on that. So there's nothing we need to really change to it. They just wanted to alert us that, hey, we know you're using the same priorities. There may be a few things, and we did tweak a few things within that plan. The teachers themselves did that. What we did is we split off into 3 groups with the teachers, and I allowed the teachers to work as a group, and then we came back to those as a whole group to look at those commitments to make sure they were in line with the wishes of the committees. Karen?
I just put a note down,
Sure.
because you mentioned the teachers, there was no elementary teachers other than.
There were
Jessica,
not.
And.
There were not
she
on
has
that
ability-
DSEP
She's
plan.
in a different
Yep.
category, I put, so I just thought that was, when you said,
Yep.
that, I didn't think it was very representative of. the
Yeah,
teachers.
we were only able to secure
Yeah.
secondary teachers for that. All of our set plans are at the elementary level.
Yeah, and I thought that might have had something to do with it as well. So
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
So in each building, you've got teachers that were on those plans.
So you're saying there are they had to be on this, so then you would ask them to be on something else.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it would be a lot of time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I thought they had a lot to do with it.
Now, the DSEP plan also, so you're aware, for those of us who are new, this is also going to be our strategic plan. So that, and this will be posted in all schools and in all classrooms. Actually, I just sent it out today to be copied by BOCES. So that'll be back to us sometime next week. And then Peter will ask the building principals to give a copy to each teacher so that it's in every classroom. And then it's also posted in there's one in my office, there's one in Peter's office, so that everybody's familiar with that plan and working toward that plan. The set plans are the school comprehensive education plans. Bellamy is a little bit different than the other schools. The 3 schools are comprehensive support, or comprehensive school improvement schools. So that means there were 1 or more things out of the ESA data that they were a little bit, or in the lower 5% across the state. So in order to be identified as a school, you have to be in the lower 5%. So we could potentially, and I've got my eye on Joy right now, there's a good possibility we could have 1 or 2 schools come off this list after October. Even though they wrote this plan out, State Ed has not caught up with all of their data to say, hey, you're no longer a school in need of improvement. So I'm really hopeful that we're hoping that we're able to take a couple schools off that we're not going to fall into that category.
And Bellamy wasn't on that, it was something else, right?
That's
There
correct.
almost could be.
Yep.
Right?
They're a
It's almost-
TSI school, so that means in one of their subgroups, they were identified in one of the subgroups. And I think it was, if I recall correctly, because that was a couple of years ago, it was in special education numbers at Bellamy.
But the
So
schools' need of improvement are Joy, Gansevoort, and Denton.
that's correct.
And then Bellamy could almost be.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, correct. So Bellamy, their plan, they also have to write a plan, just like the SEP schools. Their plan does not get approved by me.
us.
Yep,
Right.
just gets approved by us. Actually, just approved by the board, really. And then Joy, Gansevoort, and Denti all had to be approved by the state education department. And then again, has to be approved by the Board of Education. So those are the ones that are on the that are going to be on the agenda this Monday coming up.
Are these 3 schools? But, and then the 4th that we would,
Correct.
but this one doesn't, okay.
Yep. But the TSI is on there too. Bellamy, all of them have to get your approval. Gets the board's approval. Just want to see if there was anything else. Just so you're aware, if you take a look at, I guess, let's just take a look at the DSA real quick. That really helped to make sure that was all written in. What you'll find in the priority, they ask you to tell what you're going to prioritize. There's several pieces of quantitative and qualitative data that we had to go through to come up with that commitment. And that's all outlined right below for you. And then when you get into the actual commitment itself, what you'll see is what strategies we're going to use to get to that priority or commitment, what the strategy entails, what's our methodology, how we're going to look at success of that measure. And then the last thing you'll look at in the 4th column is what resources we think we need to be able to bring that to fruition. And then with those resources, those are some of the resources. If it requires us that we need some money for that resource, that's what you will see in what's called the SIG grant or the school improvement grant. Now, the state was very nice to us this year. Normally, we get that grant in July, and I'm able to work with principals throughout July and August to write that grant to get the FS10 together. The state sent us an email. I've been asking them for a while, like, when's the grant coming out? I keep looking in the portal. It's not here, not here. And it'll be out next week. Next week comes around. Nope, next week. We're still working on it.
Yeah,
So
state's
a
terrible.
week ago, when was it, Karen? We met on Friday.
It's
Mhm.
So
ridiculously
we
slow.
had just gotten the go-ahead and gotten the SIG information a week ago Friday. And they said, we'd like this to all be done by August 31st. And I said, well, you're giving us less than 2 weeks to get this accomplished.
And
I
we've been
normally do
waiting
a
for,
month. And I said, if you want us to take any care in doing what's right by the students and what the teachers need, we need to actually have the principals be able to talk to folks. So they did give us a 2-week extension. So we're looking at, I'm hoping to have everything written by September or turned in by September 12th to me from the principals. That gives them some time to get school started and get things going. And then that way I can actually write the FS10 and send that off to the state. But my guess is they're going to give us even more of, I mean, they gave us no time at all. So
yeah.
just want to make everybody aware of that, that they just, I don't know why they did it that way, but I did email them, and the next day there was a email from the person in charge, and they said, we realized that we only gave you 2 weeks to do this, so we'll extend that.
I'll give it 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, 2.5.
yeah, give us 3 instead. We don't
Yeah.
appreciate that. So any questions on the SEP plans or?
Well, we've got to work into the schedule too, that the schools, like a little team will come like I think in April, May.
Yeah.
To just kind of give us up to how they're meeting their goals.
Do you
so
use
that
the
we can-
same teams throughout the school year? Like, and then are
Yeah.
there different teams like every year because the parents are obviously.
Correct. You might get a
Yeah.
different set of parents on that. And
It's
the
good that
team,
they're
and you might
involved, though.
not.
That's-
But yeah, the parents actually, the
That's
parents
great.
had some, with the DSEP plan, had some really good information. And some good questions about the DSEP plan and
That's
made
awesome.
some good contributions. I know the one parent really worked hard at that with her group as they were working on that, and getting that from a parent perspective too is pretty beneficial as we're writing that plan. And it gives us a chance to make sure that we're hearing more than one voice in that plan. that it's just not being dictated to you from on high, from the state or from district office.
Mhm.
And honestly, the school plans, I had no, I made a couple recommendations of you might want to shore this up before they turned it in. But I really had no input into or anything with that plan. It was purely the principals, the teachers, and the parents
That's great.
that did that. So, I just made a recommendation or two just so that we would get it approved by the state
Mhm.
of what they were looking for. So any other questions on that? Okay. Keep me on track here.
That's
Number
14
three.
minutes.
We don't get okay.
14 minutes.
All right.
Karen's
Um,
hour.
So the next thing that's going to be up also for a vote is the professional learning plan. We're required by law every August to have our professional development plan approved by the Board of Education. Some school districts do a new professional learning plan every year. We do one every 3 years, so that it gives us some time to work through the things that we want to do. There'll be some things in the professional learning plan we might not have gotten to for one reason or another. COVID obviously is a big reason why we might not get to some things. But we've actually, I think, done a pretty good job of targeting most of the things in the professional learning plan. When we developed, so this is the last year of the cycle, so we will start over. Once school starts, we'll start probably either late September or early October, getting a professional learning committee together. That will be comprised of teachers, actually you have to have more teachers on the professional learning plan than you have administrators. That's one of the requirements. So we will open that up to anybody who's interested in helping to develop that plan. And then we will also have, I believe there's a parent on the plan, and we also have to have a government agency outside. So we usually look to MVCC to make sure that our professional learning plans also align somewhat with what happens in higher learning. Franca usually always does that for us. So she's a great contributor to this. So we go through, as we go through this professional learning plan, one of the things that we did do was with our rubric, our NICET rubric that we evaluate teachers on, is we also had a walkthrough form that we had principals do. And basically the walkthrough form is the observation rubric broken down into instructional practices that you can see in the classroom. And what I ask principals to do is, as they go through classrooms, like say you go into the beginning of a class, just bring that walkthrough form. It's a Google form. As you're walking through, just check off what practices you're seeing. It's not an evaluation of a teacher. It's just to say, hey, we're seeing this practice, we're seeing that practice, we're seeing that practice. We give them an opportunity, because this goes right back to the teachers, because we want them to have that instant feedback also. There's also a section that they can write some information in there if they want to give some written feedback. But for the most part, we're really looking at those checklists. We take all of that data and we also give that data to the professional learning team to look at where are some areas of strength that we have and where are some areas we might need to do some professional learning in. So we also take a look at that data, which is really our quantitative data that we're taking a look at. And we also look at qualitative data. What are the teachers asking for coming to that group? And we'll put out a Google form. What are some things that you'd like to see in the professional learning plan? So even if you're not part of the team, we're still getting some feedback from you as a group of what things would you like to do to help you grow as a teacher. So that gives us some more quantitative data from the teachers. The other thing in the professional learning plan that's kind of new for us is the Ascd Activate. And one of the things that they require you to do is you've got to make sure that you're also adhering to adult learning theory. And part of that adult learning theory is that you're able to come to your learning when you're ready to do that learning, and not when Chris Brewer wants you to sit down and learn something and talk to you for 3 hours. We do still have that professional development or professional learning available. And there's sometimes some things that we do need teachers to come to and kind of gather that information to be able to learn that information, whether it be some curriculum or new programming that we put in. But we do have the Ascd Activate, which allows teachers at any time of the day to activate learning. And we do that around our professional learning plan. So Ascd has put in some specific channels that they've created that teachers can do. But we have also taken the liberty to all of our programming in our elementary and some of our programming in our secondary. We have put our own channels in there. So right now, any new teacher coming into the district, any program that we're using can go right into Ascd Activate, watch the video and understand how to use that programming in their classrooms. We also pay teachers to do that curriculum or to do that professional learning work. So we had teachers that took advantage of that worked from their back deck of their house. They were ready to learn something and they sat down for either 3 or 4 hours. They turn in their extra duty sheet and they get paid for that professional learning. But what we're trying to do is to give folks a sense of let you learn when you're ready to learn, because when you're ready to do that, your brain's engaged and it's more likely we're going to be able to see those practices within your classroom. And that's what we're really shooting for. Now, a lot of teachers do like to still come in person. So we offer that, but we're trying to strike a little bit of a balance. And the nice thing about the Ascd Activate also is if a teacher is being observed and say there's an area that they didn't score very strongly in, or they didn't see that in the classroom, it allows us to connect them to articles about that particular indicator, and also allows us to connect some video from Ascd so that they can see in real time what it might look like as a practice in the classroom. So teachers 24 hours a day now, 365 days a year, have access to be able to do professional learning from home, from school, from wherever you want to. So that's kind of a new feature that we brought into place before the last professional development plan was first approved by the Board of Education. So again, we'll be working on that new one. We'll go ahead with another 3-year one unless the committee thinks otherwise, in which case we can do one year by year. It just takes a lot more work because you got to start it in the fall and go through. And I think sometimes that 3-year gives us something really to work towards through that time.
Down to 8.
What's that?
Down to 8.
Down to
Just
8.
Clock's
updates.
ticking.
Oh, 8 minutes.
All
All right, so that's,
Even though we
Professional
started
learning.
late,
what's that?
even though we started
She
late.
said 5, even though we started late. I brought it
Okay.
up at the beginning. so-
Okay,
The other thing that we asked for was some curriculum updates. This year, we were using a curriculum management program called Atlas Rubicon. I got some feedback from teachers. It was actually a conversation from one of the teachers, said, you know what, we're really not using that. We're not looking at that. And if we are, we're printing it out. And I said, okay, so what are your thoughts on this? Should we keep going with this program? Because it's pretty robust and gives us a lot of good information at the district level. And they said, you know, is there a way to move away from this? So what we did is we put out a survey Google form, basically 2 questions. Do you use Atlas? Do you find Atlas useful? And do you want to move away from Atlas? And overwhelmingly, about 98% said, can we move away from Atlas? Okay, no problem. So Atlas was able to take everything that we've used on that site and put it into a Word doc. So any curriculum that was put up there previous, we've got it in a Word doc that teachers can access. We've got it on a zip drive. A lot of that work needs to be redone because the standards have changed since we first put that in, with the exception of social studies. Social studies, they worked 7 through 12 and got all of that information in under the NGLS standards. So right now, we don't really have to do any tweaking to that. We do at our elementary level for social studies and science because of Savvis and Amplified. So we've had teams that have been working on that this summer, and we're now putting it into Google Sheets. I've got it. I actually made it up where it looks almost just like Atlas because there's a pacing chart in there that will be very simple for us to go in and change at any time when teachers come together. And then we've also got tabs underneath for each individual unit. So I'm happy to say we have been able to secure some teachers K-6 to work on those curriculum. That's ELA, social studies, science, and math. It's still in the process. They weren't all able to do that. And again, we weren't able to get a large amount of teachers coming in. I don't want 2 teachers to say to the rest of the teachers, hey, this is we've got it set up, but we've got a little bit more work to do with some teams. And I think as they start seeing that, oh, this curriculum looks a little different than what I'm used to, maybe I want to hop on board and give some information for that. So that'll give them that opportunity also to do that and to come together. So we are working on that currently with all subject areas, K-6, library K-6 also asked to update their curriculum. So we got them working on that a little bit. 7-8 ELA also asked to work on that this year. So they're updating their curriculum. And Algebra 1 are the ones that we have so far. Science, we weren't able to secure anybody for secondary science right now. So we're going to try to do that during the year and try to get that up and running through the year. So once I haven't had a time to read over all of them yet, I want to be able to offer them some recommendations when they go back to their teams. They do have a curriculum map that we did last year. So they do have a curriculum map to work off of this year. We're not asking teachers to work off of a new curriculum until it's board approved. At that time, then that will become the curriculum. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do it and get it board approved sometime in January. And then it's going to take some time to really go through that with teachers, make sure that everybody understands this is what the curriculum is, this is what we're looking for. The biggest piece that we're going to center this on, and conversation that came up as I was working with folks, is around shared reading in ELA. And what I've tasked them all to do is to choose one common piece that every student in 2nd grade will get around realistic fiction, let's say. So everyone will know that that first week of realistic fiction, I can walk into any 2nd grade classroom and I can see that same story being shared with our kids across the district. It's very important also with ELA to give some teacher choice in that matter too, because teachers have some good stories to share with kids. But what we want to do is make sure that enough of that genre is hit on K-6, that the kids will have the background knowledge and have enough exposure to different types of genres to be able to bring to that 3A test. So when they sit there, they'll say, hey, I've read a little bit about this, or I've read science fiction, or I've read, so they'll have that what's called schema to bring to that text. What we really do to kids in 3A testing, we would never, ever do to an adult in the real world. And part of reading comprehension is you have to have some background knowledge in order to be able to read the text successfully. And that's something the state doesn't allow on those tests. So they come to a cold read. But that's something that we can build behind the scenes without teaching to the test, just making sure they're exposed to enough opportunities through shared reading and also independent reading.
So would they do different genres, say throughout the district, K-6, but they would all be working on the same genres at the same time?
Correct.
So
Grade
say
level.
like
Grade level.
what
Yep.
grade level? So say I'm working on science fiction in 2nd grade,
Yep.
but I'm doing nonfiction with 6th graders.
They could be at that same time.
Like, you know, different.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The new board
But-
members might benefit to see like. all the-
mapping.
Yeah.
Yep.
the
Yeah.
mapping,
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
We
soon
can
as they
share.
update, they were all working on the new ones, but I'll share that out.
Yeah.
It would,
And I'll tell you, the 3 through 8 testing for a special ed student is, I don't know how we get our kids to sit. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, I just,
It is. It's very
not
difficult.
easy for a
You know,
general ed student and,
I mean,
and,
We pointed it out to the state. I've given them examples and said, how do you expect a kid to read this?
right.
You know, you get a 4th grade student reading a science fiction piece about farming and an abstract concept about farming on a foreign planet. And then you expect a 4th grader to be able to read that.
Mhm.
And I said, if you want to talk about equity also, look where you got that article from, highlights from children. Who sees highlights from children? Students that are,
Students.
kids that
Yeah.
are going to the doctors in a middle-class doctor that have insurance, not the health clinic.
Mhm.
They don't have those. So
Right.
it puts kids at a very bad disadvantage. One of the things we've got to continue doing a better job and really talking about this all the time with kids is building that independent reading time within the classroom and making sure at the minimum, kids 20 minutes a day are reading something that they're interested in, and that they can have a relationship to with their reading.
I feel like even if it's like a picture book at a
Yep.
younger level, they're telling their own story based on looking at the pictures. I mean, that's just getting the wheels turning. It's like, oh, I really want to read, even if they don't have that at home,
That's correct.
they're still trying to do it on their own while they're in school, and it's so important.
Yep. Absolutely. One of the things that's going to help in that process, we're looking at bringing in Mayan in the fall of 2023. We're doing a pilot right now, and we'll share some of that information with you all as we finish that up.
It's gonna be really awesome. One we talked
So
about.
I think that
last-
was it for curriculum. We're gonna start reviewing some of that work where we're at, see the gap. If there's any gaps in that, we'll be able to look at it vertically also a little bit K6 for that continuum. And as we go into 7 and 8, that's something that we're talking about with English teachers is we're creating a journey for kids. What's that literary journey that we want from 7 through 8 for our students? So there's gonna be some change into some of the titles. So as we continue working on that, we'll for board approval, once those things are done, we'll be looking at some new trade books that people are going to share with their teacher or their students. Dana?
Quickly, sure.
Yep.
So our title,
Oh, Sorry.
Yeah,
You're,
are you good?
Yep,
yeah,
you're-
I'm good.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'll go
We'll
quickly.
cut them short
I know.
next.
Yeah.
That's right.
You're okay.
So our title grant is going to look very similar that it did last year because it was a very comprehensive plan last year, and we weren't able to do a lot of it also for under Title IV because of busing and with COVID constraints this year. So as a reminder, Title I is really focusing on our AIS salaries. So that's Bellamy, Denty, Gans, Joy, RFA, and Stroud. So that takes up the majority of Title I, as well as there's a small percentage that is committed to homeless students. And also a portion of it that's for family engagement activities. So that's really our Title I grant. Title II is for our small class sizes. Granted, we have some constraints to small class sizes, but we have some extra sections that were created this year, this coming school year. So Bellamy had added a 4th kindergarten and 1st grade. Bellamy has an extra kindergarten. Denty has the kindergarten and 1st, and Gans has an additional 1st. So that was in efforts to have small class sizes. The other piece of this is you have to go to the highest poverty schools with small class sizes. That's the criteria for the Title II. And so that's where our Title II funds will go for the salaries for those teachers. Title III is our E&L population. And that is mainly focused on the training of our staff for E&L services, any translation equipment that we need to have for the district. And also providing some PD hours for our co-teachers. So those gen ed teachers that have students with a second language in their classroom, working with the ENL teachers together in a collaboration around curriculum. So that's Title III. Title IV, we were required to do a needs assessment this year to reassess the community on what their priorities were. And so Title IV is, there's 3 categories we have to spend our money in. And they tell us the percentage. So the first one is well-rounded education. And that's mainly our STEM opportunities as well as music and arts. The second piece is effective use of technology. And then the third is safe and healthy schools. So for our STEM, we've, for the past 2 years, have tried to put in the after-school programming at STEM for high school, elementary, all the way up through high school. They haven't been able to run the after-school programs, but we're going to put them back in again. Hopefully this year with the busing, we'll be able to do those STEM opportunities. That was also the highest level of the needs assessment the community wanted to continue to build out STEM. The second part was music and arts, and a big piece that came out of that is there's a request for a focus in theater. So Jen and I are looking to see how we could create an after-school club, K-12, a theater club. And so we're gonna put it in, again, it's gonna be contingent on busing and staffing, but we're going to build in this opportunity for theater and the arts.
Could you connect with Janet Foot to the Rising Stars somehow? She runs the Rising Stars. I mean, my granddaughter's starting on Saturday.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, that might be, let me put that on there, thank you.
it's just a,
Who was that? Was that Karen?
her name is Janet Foot.
Oh, okay.
And she's doing it by groups, so like
Okay.
my granddaughter will be in the I think it'd be first grade or second grade, but she does it by groups, so second to fifth, and then fifth to, yeah, but I don't know if that's a possibility, but she seems like we're excited about it.
We're also doing some work with Innovare on Griffiths Institute. We've been to a couple meetings with them right now. VBS and us are the only schools in the region that are really working pretty closely with them, but there's going to be, our hope is we're working with them. They really want to get into the schools with some STEM projects, and they've got more funding than we do with some of these STEM things. And they're very excited about the possibility of working with the school district. One of the things that I didn't mean to stop you there, Dana, but one of the things that we've got right now that we're working towards is we've got drone soccer. Through our Gear Up grant, we were able to purchase, I believe, 2 competitive drone soccer nets and hoops and everything else. If you ever watched a Harry Potter game of Quidditch, it's very similar, except the kids have to program the drones. They have to create the drones, and then they got to compete against each other to get through those hoops.
Cool.
And we're one of the first schools in this region to partner right now with US Drone Soccer. It's out of Colorado, and they're very interested in making this an e-sport in Rome and beginning to hold some contests here. This year we're hoping to find an advisor within the school to do that, and then also talking about what's that look like, because we don't have esports. Is that an actual sport? Is it out of the sporting realm? Where does that go? But they were very surprised we even had that when I talked to them about that. But there's a lot of, I'm involved right now with the National Science Foundation over there. They're going after a $61 billion grant for this region, for Albany, Rochester, and Binghamton and Rome. And it's kind of rumored that we may be the next Silicon Valley right now. So it's very important that we make sure we align not only our classroom instruction, the play-based learning at K2. That's how these companies work. It's not on play-based learning, but
Right.
it's a whole different atmosphere. And that whole idea of inquiry-based learning, starting at the very young age of pre-K and continuing up through, is a very important piece that we need to get right so that our kids are prepared for either jobs out there or a job somewhere else, wherever they go. But there's a lot of opportunity here for our kids right now. We're also working with BOCES on a couple different things and trying to get some apprenticeship
Yeah,
programs going.
Media library has a ton of stuff.
Yes,
It was at our conference
they
that,
do.
and I'm like, they're like, they saw my name tag and I use our books all the time because
Yeah.
if I can use our library, I will. And they're like, we know you. I said, I know, I'm always using you guys, and I'm trying to tell everyone else, but they had all this stuff out for the kids. And it's not just like Lego robotics,
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So there, I mean, I honestly didn't realize how much we had over at BOCES, but we have a lot of stuff and anyone can use it.
Sorry, Dan.
Nope, that's okay. So that's really under the STEM and theater, the music and arts. The effective use of technology we use for some of our platforms. So Reflex is paid through Title IV. And Freckle was this past year, but we were able to now get Freckle under our COSAR with BOCES. So Freckle is under that. Under safe and healthy schools, as I'm sure you can imagine, social and emotional needs are again high ranking, and specifically the teaching of emotional skills within the classroom, so that you're really helping students to be able to regulate behavior, communicate, problem solve, all of that, the natural pieces that are there in the classroom. So a big part of that is that it's not just the responsibility of a counselor to do that, but it is a classroom teacher responsibility to have the culture of teaching those daily functioning skills. And so for something that we had in the grant this past year that we weren't able to utilize, was a component of, we purchased the second step online component for this year for the counselors, but the other part of that is in pre-K, in addition to second step, we used the pyramid model practices, and there's a cozy corner, there's a solution kit. It really teaches kids how to problem solve, how to de-escalate, how to communicate what their needs are. And so we're going to use that money to purchase classroom material kits for K2 classrooms, so they can have a center, a social emotional center, a cozy corner that will help them have the tools and the resources to be able to put that in as part of their daily practice. We also did revise the report cards this year. We had a whole committee that rewrote the report cards for this coming school year, and social emotional standards and approaches to learning are part of the report cards. So it's something that is on the forefront. It's been on a report card. So how do we teach kids to do those skills? The other part of Under Safe and Healthy Schools is active learning, which we are adding in a lot of classrooms use like Go Noodle to get kids up moving, brain breaks, but this program is under Spark. It's called Spark ABC's Active Classroom. It really is aligned to the practices of a gym teacher. So it will maybe give us some credits towards our PE minutes that we never can meet. So that's in a nutshell, that is, oh, and the other part of that, sorry, is we're looking at combining kind of those ideas of Title IV's enrichment with Title I's family and community engagement, and having some real scheduled across all the buildings community nights and family nights that come do STEM with your child. Let's engage in arts with your child.
Yeah.
So that's going to be sort of the bridge between Title I and Title IV. And Title III, because Jen's been trying to do a lot of ENL family nights to bring in that population.
And last thing is Amplifying Service. I think they asked about any new programs coming in. We've had this, we had a pilot year last year with it. We're working with teachers to bring in full implementation this year. We offered a training last summer as an introduction. We also have an introduction on Ascd Activate for teachers, so they can always refer back to that at any time if they need some extra help with implementing Amplifying Service. We also did a more in-depth training this summer. At the beginning of the summer, it was live and also remote. However, the teacher wanted to actually join us. I went to both Savas and Amplify. We did it over at Stroud. And then any teacher who wasn't able to make it this summer, our first 2 superintendent's conference days, we'll have a 3-hour training, either in person, their choice, or they can watch right from their classroom if they want to, and be involved with it. So they don't have to move over to, we're doing it in the auditorium or the cafeteria and RFA, it's the big space. But we're giving teachers choice in that if you want to come in person, or if you want to go remote, you can hop on virtually. So they've got those 2 options, superintendent's conference day. And I just sent out the superintendent's conference days, and I forgot to bring a copy, and I apologize for that, but I can share that next meeting with you of what we're doing. Well, a lot of the work is, that's kind of been the thing this year is, let's not do anything new. Let's work on what we got. Let's get better at it. And we tried to work in as much building level time, so teachers can spend in their classrooms, principals can spend with their teachers. So there's quite a bit of time involved in that.
Great idea.
There is on the second day.
I know, I always appreciate it.
Yeah.
Teacher.
A designated time for the vertical alignment between 6th, 7th, and 8th for the new math standards. So that's meeting on the second day.
That was a request from the teachers to
Yeah.
be able to do that.
They're coming in on Thursday, and you have Friday off, and then you come in on Tuesday.
And come back in on Tuesday. Yep. Yeah. Just so you know, I won't be here for the board meeting Monday night. I'm gonna take a day off, a couple days on vacation before school starts again.
That's not,
So if you have, what's that?
that's not allowed.
I know. It just worked out.
I don't
that way,
blame
I'm
you.
sorry. So if you do have any questions on there, if you just hop on my email, my cell phone's on there, feel free to text me or give me a call. And Dana and Jen's gonna be here too, if you have something for them. They'd be able to answer it. I'll be back to school the 1st. everybody's here. So we'll be looking for open
Well, enjoy your couple of days off.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's just to save paper, the PD plans, like for Anna to have a copy, I have mine. So,
Brianna,
or they.
she's got that notebook.
I
okay.
got a notebook.
She's got a notebook for it.
You just want to keep the ones to put in a different binder? I just want to waste all this paper if somebody else wants a copy, which, is there anybody else who's gonna want a copy?
Of the plans.
The plans, because I have my copy, so and I don't need them here, so
gotcha,
I've already highlighted.
Um,
everything.
yeah, I think,
You see what I'm
I
saying?
passed them all out. So just whoever's not here today didn't get a copy yet. They got an electronic copy.
Yeah, I don't know if
Okay.
anybody else is gonna want a hard copy.
Oh.
I just don't know if I should just, you want me to just throw them away?
Well,
What I'm
that one
saying.
time we had
we
the
can
board
look.
meeting, we had a bunch of teachers in the crowd and we gave them our star.
The data.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
we had
Oh,
more
yeah,
than
yeah,
one.
Yes.
Yeah,
So we're like, hey, anyone that wants it, here you go. So,
We can do that.
I don't know, maybe just save it.
All right.
Yeah, they'll be up online for the public to see once they're
Okay,
all
I'll
approved.
just.
Yeah, just keep it for now.
Okay.
Or
I'm
they're-
gonna take it out of my binder, because these I keep in a separate folder, because I'll refer to them all year, when like we do
Oh, gotcha.
evaluation stuff and
Yep.
stuff, so
Okay,
they won't stay in here.
all right.
That's what I did last year, it worked pretty well, so.
Just my kind of
And we'll
girl.
probably need another notebook by the end of the year. I think, I don't know. I think these are a little smaller than last year's for some reason.
They're big enough.
Do they make
Yeah.
a bigger binder than this?
I'll try to use less paper maybe, but they do.
Yeah,
they work some
It's big.
Quite large,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they- yeah, they-
You don't want to carry that thing around.
Yeah, no,
You'll need a wagon.
yeah. No thanks, Tina. I have enough binders.
I know, I carry enough bags.
I'm like the bag lady, especially when it comes to